Chapter 12, Party Prep. Red awoke on Friday morning, the day of the secret party, with a peculiar feeling in her stomach. She blamed it on a whole mocktail of emotions that plagued her through breakfast, on her walk to school, and all throughout the morning. First was guilt. Red couldn't believe how rude she'd been to the frog butlers, who were always as kind and accommodating as possible. The second was shame at how she had disappointed her mother, after the Queen had been so proud of her for a moment. Praise from the Queen of Hearts was always hard to ignore, because there was usually so little of it. But Red knew she couldn't be as heartless as her mom. She would have gone down and apologized to the butler if there weren't any risk of getting caught. And then, of course, there were nerves. Nerves plus excitement for the party, and doubts that it would happen as she hoped. Red tried to reassure herself as she made her way along the forest path. What was the worst thing that could happen? The worst thing would be getting caught. That might have a number of consequences. At least the administrators of Wonderland High wouldn't be able to do anything, since the party was off school property and after hours. But anything happening in Wonderland, and especially the capital, was under the Queen's jurisdiction. Red, doubting her mother, would punish all the Wonderland High kids, though she didn't put it past her. No, more likely she would go after the ringleaders, really make an example of them. Maybe she would ground Red for a month. Maybe she would go so far as to cancel the tea ceremony. Red shrugged to herself. So if that was the worst that could happen? Hiya! Red turned, startled to find that Ace had popped up beside her on the trail. Oh, hi, she smiled, a little too brightly. You excited? His grin was infectious. A lock of his curly dark hair fell over his eyes, and he pushed it back. Red nodded, excited and then some. You're telling me. I could hardly sleep last night, running through all these different scenarios. He gave a low whistle and shook his head. Well, the plan is that I'll do some prepping of my own today, and Chester will join me as soon as he can after school. You go to your princess lessons, or whatever, so everything seems all jolly and normal. Then, he smacked his hands together. Boom! We meet up, and it's party time. Okay, Red said breathlessly. We're really doing this. Sure are. Red bit her lip, then sort of blurted out. Thanks for all your help with this, Ace. It's been really great working with you and Chester. I think we're going to pull it off. Ace winked. I'm proud of all the progress you've made, Princess. Ugh. Red made a face. Not you, too. Sorry, couldn't resist. See you soon. And he disappeared, turning off onto some unseen fork in the trail. Focusing on classes was impossible. Red watched the students carefully, looking for any indication of whether they harbored secret plans to attend the party. Most of them steered even clearer of her than usual. Dora, who had younger siblings at Wonderland High, must have spread news of the events at Princess Training yesterday. It was only Maddox who seemed to have more of a twinkle in his eye than he normally did, though Red and Chester had done everything in their power to keep the invitation away from the professors. And here's a treat. No homework tonight, the teacher announced at the end of class, as he was notorious for assigning tough projects over the weekend. Enjoy giving your brains a break. Though Red trusted Maddox, he was still a teacher, and this made her suspicious. Wow, no homework, she said, passing by his desk after class. What will you do this weekend if you can't imagine all of us toiling away? He smiled mischievously. Oh, I'll muddle through somehow. Perhaps I'll even try my hand at making hats, like my old father. It's a good weekend to try something new. Is it? I certainly think so, he said, fixing her with a knowing eye. Red nodded and bid him goodbye. She hoped Maddox could keep a secret. Royal training passed uneventfully after the previous day's session. Dora and Tweed maintained a quiet, almost respectful silence as the Queen of Hearts went through the finer point of card army strategy. That was out of the older girl's wheelhouse anyway. Red would have found it interesting if her mind wasn't already totally occupied with thoughts of the party. It was all she could do to stay focused enough to respond to her mother's questions and look as though she was listening. Sure enough, when the Queen of Hearts demanded to hear Red's law for the royal decree, it took her a moment to remember her lackluster idea. Right. It was to thwack any unsanctioned plants immediately, straight from the root. No mercy. Red said. The Queen of Hearts frowned. So your royal decree is about weeding. When Red didn't elaborate, the Queen sighed. Dear, you're going to have to do better than that. When the lecture was over, Twee and Dora bade her a hurried goodbye, and Red was alone in her bedroom by 8 p.m., like she was every Friday night. But tonight would be different. First, Red called Mock Turtle Pizza, impersonating a castle cook and ordering 10 pies to the point on the forest path where Ace would pick them up. Then she was faced with the oddly difficult task of deciding what to wear. Red hadn't even thought about it, but she didn't really have any party clothes. The dull gowns she wore to school and the elaborate dresses for the parties and tea ceremonies wouldn't do. More than anything, she didn't want to choose an outfit that reminded kids she was her mother's daughter. Finally, Red settled on a cool red and black dress with hearts all over it that she wore over her red leather jeans. When all was done, Red stuffed pillows beneath her bedsheets to approximate the shape of her sleeping body and turned off the lights to her room. It was a little trick Chester and Ace had clued her into. Red slipped down to the kitchens and stuffed a stack of plates and bundles of silverware into her book bag. Then she snuck into the grand hall without being seen by any soldier guards and pressed a small square of bricks behind her mother's throne. It was one of the secret passages within the castle, and this one had a path that led under the moat and into the hedge maze. Red slid the stones back into place behind her, pulled a flashlight out of her bag, and started through the dark ancient tunnel with practiced movement. She never had such a reason to use the passages before. Usually she was just bored. This time the mossy stone walls and far-off sounds of dripping water felt secretive and exhilarating. Red jogged all the way through the hedge maze and to the clearing, heart pounding. She half expected to hear sounds of people and laughter already, but the forest was still quiet. People must have not arrived yet. As Red stumbled through the thick underbrush, she tripped and collided with someone else. "Oof!" Ace's voice called. "Careful!" His arms were full of pizzas. "Oh, good, you got them!" Red exclaimed. She took half of the stack so he could see. "They sounded a little unsure when I told them to deliver to the side of the road, but I knew you'd come through. They're not sweet tarts, but at least there's enough for everyone," he smiled. "You look nice." "Oh, thanks." Red shifted the pizzas so he wouldn't see her blush. "You too." He was wearing a top hat, a leather duster, and his usual jeans, but he somehow made the casual outfit look extremely cool. Red cleared her throat. "How are things going?" It's good. We're working on it." "Yeah?" He didn't have to answer. They stepped through the curtain of branches and into the clearing, and Red's heart dropped just a little. It looked mostly the same as before. In the dusk, a few lanterns glowed around the circumference of the field, but unlit strings of fairy lights were still visible. The space was empty except for Chester, who was working furiously to light a campfire in the center. "Hey," he called, "can you bring some twigs and stuff? This is..." "Okay," Red said. "Yeah," Ace said apologetically. "Chester and I got here and realized we had no extension cords for the lights. He's got some mattress over there, but I think he's struggling. Also, I found out some toads got into our badminton equipment and chewed through the netting, so we won't have any games. I wish we had a table for the pizzas. We could put them on that old log, maybe?" Ace and Red set the pizzas down, then helped Chester gather kindling. They threw sticks and drew dry leaves around the logs he'd stacked, and he got back to work. I had it going, I swear, he said. It just needs a little more oomph there. A tiny flame licked along the bottom log, and soon they had campfire going. It wasn't the bonfire any of them had imagined, but it did make things a bit cozier. There were a few other fallen logs around Chester's fire, and the three of them sat down. Red rubbed her arms and looked around the clearing. Then she said what they were all thinking. Do you think anyone will come? Chester pursed his lips and ran a hand through his hair. I passed out every invitation I had. We can only wait and see. Well, if they don't, then I'm going to give up on every last one of those boring... Shh, Ace hissed. Wait, did you hear that? What? Chester whispered. But then they did hear it. All three of them. There were voices coming from the path and through the trees.